Part 25. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 250. Lao Chai. Yang Wantu and the others looked at the corpse lying on the ground, and felt horrified in their hearts. They didn't know where this devil jumped out from. When they were dealing with the child just now, Su Tong was already close to him, but he kept waiting for an opportunity, and did not take decisive action until they were less than 10 meters away from each other. At this moment, Chai Li was killed with one move. He did not stop, clasping his fists with both hands, and bowed heavily in the direction of the three of them. "Thank you, Shankao." When a familiar gesture came towards them, Yang Wantu and the others were instantly frightened out of their wits, and their minds could not help but think of the terrifying scenes they saw at the train station. The fear shrouded by Shuigui made the three of them flee as soon as possible, as if they were facing a powerful enemy. But what they didn't know was that this was what Su Tong was waiting for. The moment the three of them turned around, the pistol had already appeared in his hands. Bang bang bang. As the gunfire rang out, Yang Wantu felt a pain in his abdomen and fell to the ground involuntarily. He was still wondering, why is it a gun? In confusion, a corpse fell heavily in front of him, which made Yang Wantu wake up. When he raised his head, he found that the other two brothers had fallen into a pool of blood, and each of them had 2 bloody bullet holes. As the saying goes, once bitten by a snake, you will be afraid of ropes for 10 years. Sometimes this person has suffered a loss or been beaten in something, and he has remembered in his bones that he cannot do this thing. For example, if someone pulls the switch 10 times, nothing happens, but something goes wrong after the 11th pull, and the handle is hit because of the leakage. The next time he went to pull the switch, he wanted to hold the tips of his fingers to pull it, for fear that if there was another leakage of electricity, he would get hit on his hand. This is the mentality of Yang Wantu and others. After so many years of practice, they had enough energy to hit the top, and Su Tong's mountain buckle could not hurt their minds at all. But at the freight station, these three people were frightened by Master Shuigui's methods, and they had long since lost their fearless spirit. The moment he saw Bashenko, everyone panicked. A single move between the masters would result in death. What's more, the three of them turned around and ran in a panic. In Su Tong's eyes, they were living targets. If they didn't shoot them, they would be sorry for the psychological shadow left by their master. When Yang Wantu saw that both brothers were dead, he suddenly realized this and turned around and pointed at Su Tong angrily, "You don't have martial ethics." Su Tong wiped the gun body a few times and blew lightly on the muzzle, "Sorry, I'm talking about science." After speaking, he pointed the gun at Yang Wantu, "Do you want to say it yourself, or should I help you say it?" Yang Wantu was also stubborn. When he saw the black muzzle of the gun pointing at his head, his heart skipped a beat. He knew that he was going to die anyway, so he simply raised his head and said, "Go ahead, kill me, and I won't tell you anything." "Kill you?" Su Tong shook his head repeatedly and held his chin with his palm. "No, no, no, what are you going to do to kill you? Didn't you say you were going to cut me into 8 pieces and throw me into a medicine bucket until my bones and muscles rotted? Life would be worse than death. It's not as cruel as you, but it's still possible to pull out your soul. Anyway, there are a lot of ghosts in this place." "No." Yang Wantu panicked when he heard this. He quickly sat up and said to Su Tong, "Little brother, it's better to dissolve enemies than to make enemies. We don't have any blood feud. Let's keep a thin line in our lives. Bah, why didn't you leave a trace when you killed people just now? You killed people and ghosts. You must have gone crazy." When Ji Feiyu saw that Su Tong was done, he immediately ran over. After hearing Yang Wantu's words, and suddenly started to curse. Despite his age, Yang Wantu could only nod his head and beg for mercy. "I can let you go, but tell me first, what is that thing?" Su Tong pointed to the huge lantern above his head and asked Yang Wantu. When Yang Wantu heard that there was a way to survive, he hurriedly said, "The well of rebirth is the well of rebirth, guiding wandering souls to rebirth. Well of purity." He frowned. Rebirth is more like what Buddhism or other foreigners say. I wonder if this thing is related to Buddhism. Seeing that Su Tong was thinking about something, Yang Wantu quickly continued, "Little brother, don't kill me. Today's ghost market is a big opportunity. If you seize the opportunity and share this merit, it will be enough for you, little brother. If you build a tall building out of flat ground, it will cost you 10 years of practice. When a person is about to die, he will hold on to any life-saving straw in his hand, and even this straw will be dragged down by him." Yang Wantu was afraid that Su Tong would regret it, so he tried his best to survive, so he explained the whole plan of Qian Shu and others clearly in one breath. It turned out that after the last incident at the train station, the strangers involved in arresting Su Tong suffered heavy casualties, and some seniors were even seriously injured. In addition, Shuigui, who came later, was like a god coming down to earth, directly destroying most of the spirit of this group of people. Even Master Chu Zhao hurriedly left El City the next day. Master Chu Zhao said that Shuigui had an old relationship with his master, but the Jinzimen owed him a favor and had to withdraw from the Bamang conference. The reason is reasonable, but in the eyes of those who are interested, might this be an excuse for Mr. Chu Zhao to run away in advance if he senses something is wrong? When he left, it was like taking away one of the stool legs from under Senju's butt. It shouldn't be said that 3 of them were taken away. After all, he was the leader of Kinmen. His divination and fortune-telling skills were not much worse than those of the orthodox disciples of Tianchi Dao. When he was there, he was like a handsome flag, and when he left, it was like a flag falling. This makes it very difficult for Kinju to do it. He knows that this time there are no people in the world and people are united. It is precisely because of the changes in the times that many people no longer know where to go, so they choose this path. Once people's hearts are shattered, all the aliens will be like a piece of loose sand. I'm afraid they don't even need Shuigui, the son of destiny, to take action, and their Bamang meeting will collapse and come to nothing. So after much deliberation, I decided to take advantage of the ghost market opening during the Hungry Ghost Festival to make a small one first and send all the wandering souls in the ghost market into the well of rebirth, and the merits would be shared equally by everyone. On the one hand, it is to boost morale, and on the other hand, it is to increase everyone's strength so that they can muster the strength to defeat Shuigui, a stumbling block. Thousands of hands move is very clever. As long as they taste the sweetness, these strangers will be like sharks that smell the smell of blood. At that time, peoples will, Shuigui, you are destiny, and I am afraid that you will be difficult to defeat everyone. Oh my god. You guys have taken the courage of a bear and a leopard. Are you trying to steal business from under the nose of the Lord of Hell? After Ji Feiyu heard Yang Wantu explain the entire plan, his head was buzzing. He felt terrible in his heart, but he couldn't help but admire the courage of this group of people. If you do this, when tomorrow dawns and the underworld calls back the ghosts, you will definitely find that the number does not match. Confusing yin and yang is a taboo in the underworld. Are you really not afraid of being sent to the 18 hells? 18 hells? Yang Wantu smiled coldly and shuddered unconsciously. He glanced at Su Tong and knew that this guy was a supporter of the new era. He forced himself to sit up as straight as possible, lowered his eyelids, and fought from time to time. We are living like hell now. The Qing dynasty is dead, the Republic of China is over, what is the new era? Haha, in my opinion, an era without awe is hell. Su Tong shook his head, rummaged through the props book, and finally found a roll of quick hemostasis bandage. This was given to him by the guy named Zhang Hu in Yang Zixuan's team. The effect was pretty good, and he still had some left. The next few are enough for Yang Wantu. What, I don't remember who Zhang Hu is, the former owner of demon power and leopard soul cloak. Here you go, bandage it yourself and get out. Su Tong threw the bandage to Yang Wantu. His injury was not fatal. He just lost a lot of blood at the moment. Stop the bleeding and you can leave. You. When Yang Wantu heard this, he was secretly happy at first, and then felt incredible. He thought that after he told the truth, this little devil would definitely kill him. I didn't expect that he would actually let me go. Let's go, old man. You're not young anymore. Go home and enjoy peace and happiness. If you don't understand something, just ask your children. If your children don't understand, just ask your grandchildren and see if they are. Do you like the days of kneeling and surviving under the fools of the ghosts and gods, or do you prefer the days of standing up and making the decision under the sun? Su Tong's voice was slow and warm. There was no domineering attitude in his magnetic voice, nor did he stand on the moral high ground to trample on the arrogance of others. Yang Wantu couldn't be fooled. When he was confused, he heard Su Tong slowly say, "After all, the future world is their world, isn't it?" You. Yang Wantu's face darkened. Translated from this sentence, he has already reached this age and his life is decreasing day by day. What the future will look like has nothing to do with him. Since it has nothing to do with him, what is he doing with his leisure time? Can you hold it? In the final analysis, it is just selfishness and an empty dream. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 251. Why did you really let him go like this? Ji Fei was a little unwilling. Because I said let him go. As a human being, you must have principles and keep your word, Su Tong said nonchalantly. He glanced at Yang Wantu's limping steps and disappeared through the gate of the ghost market. Recalling Yang Wantu's words just now, he couldn't help but feel a different kind of emotion. These older generation guys, they may have been the defenders of the balance. But times are progressing and society is moving forward. Suddenly one day they find that the balance they depend on for a living is broken. Confusion, fear, and the changes in the new era gradually make them unable to adapt. In their eyes, they don't know what an era without order, balance, and all looks like. It is precisely the fear of the unknown that leads them to gradually go to extremes. I can see through the problems because I come from reality and have personally experienced how the motherland under modern civilization built the atomic bomb step by step, stood up and became a world power. And they can't see. Thinking of this, Su Tong looked at the child sealed in the black mist. Even through the black mist, he could feel the unstoppable aura of the red-tasseled spear in the child's hand. Even though he was sealed in the black water mine, those sharp little eyes still gave people a piercing feeling, murderous and terrifying. How about this? Ji Fei saw him looking at the child in front of him in silence. He stepped forward and poked the black mist that had condensed into a gelatinous texture with his finger. He glanced around and saw the crutch that Chai Li had dropped on the ground. This crutch looked ordinary, but it was actually inlaid with two large, round black gems. Ji Fei took the crutch in his hand and poked it at the black mist in front of him casually. Suddenly a strong wind blew, and the black mist in front of him was quickly sucked back by the crutches. Without the obstruction of the black mist, I saw the silver-red tasseled gun coming out with a murderous aura, and almost stabbed Ji Fei in the head. Fortunately, Su Tong was on the side with quick eyesight and quick hands, and kicked Ji Fei. Kicked to the ground. Despite this, Ji Fei felt his scalp was extremely cold, and his body fell to the ground. It took him a while to realize that he was still alive, and he breathed a sigh of relief. It was only when he lowered his head that he saw a large piece of hair falling from the top of his head. When he wiped his head with his hand, the top of his head was actually bare, with not a single hair left. In an instant, Ji Fei's face froze, and he covered the top of his head with his hands. He stared at the bewildered child in front of him with resentful eyes and said, "You are too bald to be like this." The child was startled and glanced blankly at Ji Feiyu, who had a bald head, and then at Chai Li's body behind Su Tong. He couldn't help but blush, and felt a little embarrassed. He apologized to Ji Feiyu repeatedly, but Ji Feiyu did not take the matter at ease. Instead, he muttered, "My master once said that I will be decapitated, and I can be replaced by a proxy. Maybe it is not a bad thing." As he spoke, he looked around and saw a straw hat on the ground. He picked it up and put it on his head. "It's not safe here, leave now." Su Tong pointed to the door behind him and signaled the little hero to leave as soon as possible. Judging from Yang Wantu's words, Qian Xiao and the others may have been planning this plan for more than a day or two. The entire ghost market is their target, regardless of whether they are living or wandering souls. Although this little hero has meritorious deeds to protect himself, in such a place of right and wrong, it is better to become stronger as soon as possible. "No, I'm not leaving." Although he is very young, his voice is loud and powerful. Running away when encountering difficulties is a deserter. "I didn't do it when I was alive, and I shouldn't do it when I die." After speaking, his eyes glanced at Su Tong and Ji Feiyu. "You look older than me, but I was born earlier than you. Before your parents were born, I was already on the battlefield killing the enemy." Ji Feiyu bent down and looked at him curiously. "You are a heroic soul. It is said that the underworld will not let you out easily. How did you get out? Why did you come to this place?" "Because I didn't go down." "What's the point of going down? Didn't I hear about the Hungry Ghost Festival? I just came here to see if I could change into some clothes. Who knew that something like this would happen? Then follow, and we'll take care of you together." Su Tong heard this and did not refuse. "By the way, what should I call you?" "Just call me Su Ching," Su Ching said, and the spear in his hand turned into a point of light and disappeared. Ji Feiyu quietly pulled Su Tong. "We really have to take him with us." Seeing Ji Feiyu still looking reluctant, he curled his lips and sneered, "Who are you showing your grimace to? They are not stronger than you. Who knows who will be dragged down at the critical moment? Just have fun secretly." Ji Feiyu heard the same thing. Although he looked like a child, he was much better than him in one hand just now. When he thought about this, Ji Feiyu suddenly beamed. "Woo!" At this time, the low horn sound echoed in the ghost city again. The sound of the horn was very deep, and when I heard it, my heart beat faster, and I even felt like I was being summoned. Along with the sound of the horn, a wisp of green smoke was seen floating on the corpses of Chai Li and the other 3 people on the ground. The 3 people who were originally killed by Su Tong actually stood up again. No, it was not that their corpses stood up, but that their souls seemed to be affected by something. After floating out of the corpses lightly, they walked towards the direction of the well in front of them in a daze. Seeing this, Su Tong and the other 2 simply followed them. Along the way, you can see densely packed wandering souls forming along an orderly queue, slowly walking towards the well of life. "Look over there." At this time, Ji Feiyu pointed forward and saw small lanterns one after another slowly lighting up from every corner of the ghost market. The shape of these small lanterns is exactly the same as the huge well of life above the head. The lantern floats up, and wandering souls are sucked in from time to time and disappear without a trace. Here we go. Obviously, this feast of sharing merit has been started, and everyone is frantically grabbing the food on the table. What should we do? Seeing more and more lanterns suspended in the air, Ji Feiyu's scalp felt numb for a while, as if he had become a fish on the display board, waiting for others to hold out their chopsticks. Go up and take a look before we talk. The problem is the huge lantern above. The only solution is to destroy the lantern. So the 3 of them began to quicken their pace, pushing left and right among the crowd of ghosts, but the horns were still blowing, and the more the 3 of them walked up, the stronger the sound became. Su Qing gradually couldn't stand this sound. Even the soul of a hero is still a soul after all. But if you continue to go up, I'm afraid Su Qing may not be able to bear the rest of the way. Seeing this, Su Tong's heart moved, and he took out the soul coffin that Ji Feiyu had given him before. You go in and hide first, and I will let you out after I deal with this broken speaker. Ji Feiyu nodded when he saw this. Yes, yes, this soul coffin can protect you. If you hide in it, no one can do anything to you. Just come out when you feel more comfortable. Su Qing covered his head, nodded, and his figure turned into a stream of light and got into the coffin. As soon as he entered the coffin, Su Qing's face suddenly looked much better, and he felt relaxed. Ha 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 ha, merit, merit. Under a small hanging lamp, two young men were leaning forward in joy. Under the light of the hanging lamp, one ghost after another was sucked into the lamp. With each ghost inhaled, the light of the hanging lamp becomes more brilliant. They only need to burn the hanging lanterns to obtain the merits inside. Isn't this more comfortable than the ghost temple fare? They have to use various methods to save the wandering souls. They can just sit on the ground and watch. It's just a matter of making money. And the speed is not only 10 times, but 100 times faster than the ghost temple fare. Hey, at this rate, in 3 hours, when the rooster crows, the merits will be enough to be worth our hard work for 30 years. Ha ha ha. Are you happy, really happy? Just like the Warcraft trumpet being brought into the book by the mage, it is simply endless happiness. Just when the two of them were laughing from ear to ear, they suddenly heard a shout from behind them, "Hey!" The two of them looked back and saw Su Tong with his hands clasped in fists looking at them with a smile. Congratulations on getting rich. Get rich. Before the two of them could understand who this person was, they suddenly felt dizzy. Their heads felt as if they had been smashed flat by an 80-year-old sledgehammer. In the daze, one of them still tried to stand up, but just as soon as he lost his temper, his chest felt like it was about to explode. He spit out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground unconscious. It seems that gaining experience in the soup restaurant some time ago is still effective. It seems that the power of Beishinko is enough to rival the power of magic and corrosive fire. However, the premise for this is that the opponent has no way to defend himself. Otherwise, unless he can achieve the same level of truth and falsehood, virtuality and reality as his master, the power of Beishinko may be greatly reduced. But even at a huge discount, it is still very easy to deal with these cats and dogs. That's it, Ji Feiyu stepped forward and grabbed the rope to pull down the lantern. This small lantern looks small, but its workmanship is exquisite. There are dense writings on it. The principle of the Kongming lantern is written on it, and a wellhead made of paper hangs below. It looks similar to the huge lantern above their heads. What is written here? Ji Feiyu watched it carefully for a moment, but did not recognize the words in the handwriting that looked like ghost drawings. Su Tong took it over and took a look, and couldn't help but frown. It's in English. English. Ji Feiyu was startled when he heard the words, foreign language. Why is the well of purity written in foreign language? Su Tong fumbled around in his pocket for a while, took out the soul bead of the bald butcher before, and pinched it against the mouth of the lamp. The soul bead immediately split open. Before the butcher's soul could unfold, it was pulled directly into the lamp by a force. Inside. At the same time, a faint holy breath flashed from the mouth of the well. Although this breath was weak, for him with a dark physique, it was as pungent as poison. Seeing this, Su Tong thought about it and probably understood it. He held his chin in his palm and looked sideways at the huge lantern above his head. He couldn't help but said to himself, "Oh, it turns out you are also afraid of being liquidated." You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 252. I made some mistakes in chapter 89 and need to review it again, sorry. There is a saying called settling accounts after autumn. Farmers in the north farm once a year. After the autumn harvest, they can sell the grain and exchange some money to pay off the debts of the year. For example, the wine money owed to Lao Zhao's family, the clothes money from the cloth shop, the tea money from Feng Lai building next door. Ahem, that's why it is said to be settling accounts after the fall. It's not just the aftermath of the fall that settles accounts. Beheading and killing people are also done after the fall. For example, we caught a few flower-picking thieves and one who liked to write books out of chapters. Hey, they were caught in the spring, but they were put to the market in the autumn and chopped down. Because the weather is cold, this season, everything is bleak, fallen leaves are flying, and the place is filled with a chilling atmosphere. There is no need to exaggerate the atmosphere. Moreover, the temperature is relatively low, and the corpses are not easy to decay, which can also reduce the occurrence of plague. The same is true in the underworld. The judge has a list in his hand. He will count it for you in October after autumn and during the winter clothes festival, and call you. Who is that? Your family has burned clothes for you, come and get it. Those who have received clothes will put a mark on the list, and those who have not received clothes will put a cross on the list. This is the Zhonyuan, and Hanyi is only 3 months away. Qianshao and the others are playing so big, even if there are thousands of souls wandering in the underworld, you suddenly lose such a large amount, the judge does not ask, and the Lord of Hell also unwilling. So when the time comes, this matter will definitely lead to a big mess. Don't talk about merits at that time. Whether you can save your life or not is one thing. Yin Cao will not care about the affairs of the Yang world, but if you reverse Yin and Yang, the nature will be different. How could Qinzhi not understand the seriousness of this? He dared to do this because this well of rebirth, the place of rebirth, is not a heavenly palace, but a Western holy palace. It turns out that when the Japanese invaded China, Qinzhi also killed many Japanese and rescued a foreign monk from a concentration camp. This foreign monk followed Senju for a while in preaching and preaching. Senju himself was a standard pragmatist and usurper. He had studied Taoism, worshipped Buddha, and learned whatever was useful. The two have been in contact for a long time, and Qinzhi not only learned foreign language, but also spoke fluent English. You say that you are so smart, but you don't want to learn from the good. If you are willing to learn science, you will probably become an expert, and your contribution to building homes will be in the contemporary era. How delicious! But that's how people are. You can call him smart, he is really smart, but in the end he committed suicide. You say he is not smart, you are not yet at his level. Qian Shu figured it out and couldn't let Yin Cao know about this, so he simply built this well of rebirth, which contained the teachings of the Holy Court, and all the people who were saved to their side. In this way, even if the following people are looking for them, they won't be able to find out the whereabouts of these ghosts for a while. Even if they are found out, it doesn't matter. By then, their big things will be done, and they will have already crossed the ocean. Although Su Tong didn't know these things, he felt an instinctive dislike after reading the foreign writing on it and the overflowing sacred aura. After thinking about it in my mind, I estimated that this guy Qinzhi should use this method to avoid some kind of karmic punishment. To confirm his idea, he casually threw the lantern into the prop book. The result was pretty much what I had guessed. Holy Sky Lantern. Legend has it that souls can ride on this lamp and travel to heaven. After burning, you can gain certain special power blessings. Looking at the note above, Su Tong raised his eyebrows slightly, and suddenly a bold idea came to his mind. He raised his head and looked at the lights not far away, then turned to look at Ji Feiyu behind him, his eyes flashing with a fanatical light. Ji Feiyu was so frightened by him that he looked at her. She didn't know why, but she suddenly felt an ominous premonition in her heart. She felt that the eyes of the guy in front of her were becoming more and more fanatical, and she covered her chest with her hands. "You, what are you going to do?" "Hey hey." Su Tong grinned, put his arm on Ji Fei's shoulders, and whispered, "I have a bold idea, we can have a good chat." Can I say no?" Ji Fei swallowed and thought with his toes that this was definitely not a good idea. But Su Tongna gave him a chance to say no. He took his arm and walked aside. He didn't know what he said, but he made Ji Fei agree half-heartedly. Senior Kinju's ability to conceal the truth from the sky is truly astonishing. I never imagined that such a day would come. On the terrace below the Well of Rebirth, everyone complimented Jianshu. "I have been practicing for so many years and have never seen such a method. It is really an extraordinary thing for human beings. We have never thought of such a method. The combined age of these old guys is enough to hand over a 1,000-year-old tortoise. But when you say it, you will get goosebumps on your skin." Every one of them looked so grateful that they were about to kneel down to Jianshu, use the same lines from Tianlong Ba Bulletin, and shout a few times, "The old immortal Jianshu has boundless magic power," and other flattery. Are you saying that these old guys don't feel embarrassed? You can say such disgusting things, but in front of everyone, without even turning off the lights. In fact, blushing is a blushing thing, but my father gave me too much. In the face of everyone's compliments, Kinju seemed much calmer. He took off the lower half of the mask in a hurry, revealing his mouth. He held the tea bowl in one hand and tasted it one bite at a time. After a few sips, he couldn't help but shake his head. Only the tea bowl was visible. There was a bowl of tea with a few white jasmine flowers floating on it. It is the famous Baitan Piaoxiu among scented teas. However, although the Baitan Piaoxiu in my hand tastes good, it still cannot be compared with the tea from Feng Lilu. Feng Lilu's Baitan Piaoxue not only has a mellow taste and fragrance, but the spring water for drinking tea is brought back from Longmen Mountain, which is unforgettable after tasting it. If it is paired with the mung bean cake made by Feng Lilu pastry chef, the taste will be amazing. Unfortunately, Fenglai Tower has been closed. Shuigui, an old thief, hit the hill button, and the entire Fenglai Tower was completely destroyed. It became a place where no one can enter, and whoever enters will be destroyed. I'm afraid it will be difficult to taste the snow falling on the Baitan Lake that he has been thinking about for a long time. Thinking of this, Kinju felt as if a thorn had been stabbed in his heart. When everyone saw him shaking his head, they thought he said something wrong. The compliments in the room suddenly stopped, and everyone looked at Kinju. Sensing the strangeness of everyone, Kinju Mask raised his brows and said with a smile, "Don't worry, I just thought of other things." After saying that, he put down the unfinished tea in his hand and said calmly, "Where are we now? Today's is just an appetizer. By next month, we will break open the yin and yang Dao. By then it will be enough to change our fate against the will of heaven." "Good." Everyone yelled excitedly, "Yes, this is just an appetizer, the countless evil spirits in the yin and yang Dao are the main meal." At the thought of this, everyone danced excitedly, looking forward to the arrival of the carnival feast. "What about Shuigui? We can't defeat him either." Amidst the cheers, there was finally a discordant voice, like a bucket of cold water poured on everyone's heads, extinguishing most of the enthusiasm in everyone's hearts. Jianshu raised his eyelids and was about to look for the source of the sound. He glanced over but saw no trace, and he immediately cursed and disappointed in his heart. It's like the company leaders are preaching to everyone about the future of the company and everyone's glory, and when they are frantically giving everyone blood, you pop up and shout about a salary increase. The leader of the city government would have been furious if he had a cerebral hemorrhage on the spot. Fortunately, Senju is a person who lives like a human spirit. He is so angry that he wants to tear the person out and cut him into pieces, but his face is calm and calm. He picks up the tea bowl again and sips lightly. "Take a bite." Everyone's hearts trembled, but when they heard Shuigui's name, Many of them were about to get scared on the spot. But when he looked again, he found that Kinju was drinking tea slowly, with a leisurely and comfortable demeanor in front of everyone. He didn't say a word, but it also gave others reassurance. Everyone, who is Shuigui? Last time, he was just a sneak attack. We were out of people and horses at the time. We were shaken by the little bastard's explosion and were unconscious. That's when that guy took advantage of us. The person who spoke was Mr. Urgent. The boss did not speak and the second child was not around. The responsibility of smoothing things over naturally fell on the third child. After speaking, he turned around and glanced at the young man behind him, nodded to him, and the young man immediately took out a large cardboard box like magic. The box was opened, and inside were booklets without titles. Everyone, this is the immovable Vajra mantra. I once got a treasure from an encounter with an eminent Buddhist monk. It is the most miraculous way to resist evil spirits. I fought against that little devil. With this mantra, he was able to kill even a hair on my head. It wasn't hurt. If a passerby hadn't happened to pass by and let this kid run away, I would have killed that little devil at the intersection of Tianqiao Street that day. The urging man raised his head, patted his chest and told everyone about that glorious deed, and asked the young man to distribute the immovable Vajra mantra to everyone. Junior, my cultivation is still shallow, but the seniors have great strength and will definitely be able to work wonders. When we meet that old thief Shuigui again, we can't go wrong if we all join together. Everyone took a look at the small book and saw that it was indeed a mysterious mantra. There seemed to be a Buddhist power echoing during the chanting. They couldn't help but feel moved and thanked Mr. Urgent. Seeing that everyone was calm, Qianshu narrowed his eyes and nodded to Mr. Urgent. That look seemed to be recognition and satisfaction for his subordinates. Don't worry, everyone, that old thief Shuigui is alone. You can't beat four hands with two fists. Before Qianshu could finish his words, he heard a sentence coming from below, the tiger beats the dogs. Thousand-Hand eyes stared, and this sudden sentence almost choked him to death. His nose under the mask was almost crooked with anger, and he looked sideways at the crowd, who is causing trouble. Grandpa is here. Everyone was startled and followed the sound, only to see an MP3 player placed on the table behind them. 4 words were repeatedly chanted in it: Grandpa is here, Grandpa is here, Grandpa is here. Who is it? Kinju's face sank, he waved his hand and threw the tea bowl, smashing the MP3 to pieces immediately. But at this moment, Kinju suddenly felt a strong sense of crisis coming over him like a rising tide, and he suddenly saw the crowd from the corner of his eye. In the middle, a young man looked at him with a smile on his face, holding a cold pistol in his hand. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 253. What did it take to be a killer in ancient times? Courage and martial arts. As the so-called chivalrous man uses force to break the law, superb martial arts are absolutely indispensable. Otherwise, you will be hacked to death before you even run forward. You are not a killer but a reckless man. Just like the soldiers in the game, after pressing the charge button, you will enter the cemetery the next second. But in modern times all a killer needs is a pistol. It doesn't require superb or magical skills, just a pistol. Even a 3-year-old child can kill someone. When Kinju saw the black muzzle pointing at him, the hairs on his hair actually stood up one by one. The feeling was really indescribable, as if his soul was about to be pierced. Feeling a huge threat approaching, he immediately rushed forward regardless of his embarrassment. Following a series of gunshots from the crowd, 3 bullets made 3 holes in the ground. Each bullet was narrowly dodged by Thousand Hands. As soon as the gunfire rang out, everyone immediately became confused. When Su Tong saw that he missed a hit, he turned around and squeezed into the crowd, walking away quickly outside. But as soon as he turned around, a strong murderous aura surged behind him. It was a young man with purple fluorescence flashing on his body. He walked quickly towards him with his head lowered, and a dark red dagger was clasped in his hand. As soon as Su Tong noticed him, the guy's figure blurred for an instant. When he reappeared the next second, he was already in front of Su Tong. Caught. Dean's low voice was a little arrogant and a little lonely, and his indifferent eyes seemed to have judged the guy in front of him to death. He raised his hand and let out a cold light. The cold light was only 3 inches long, but it seemed to have condensed the murderous aura to the extreme. It shone with a rainbow-like psychedelic light in the air, making people dizzy. Flying rainbow strike can only be activated when the distance between the target and itself reaches 1 meter. After activation, a flying rainbow strike will be launched, which has 30% armor penetration, serious injury, and disabling effects. This is just the single card effect of Fi Hung Strike. What is really scary is that Dean has 5 prop cards on his body, all of which are configured around the damage bonus of Fi Hung Strike. With the blessing of various passive effects, Fi Hung Strike has become a unique and powerful skill for Dean. He can kill one person in 1 step and leave no trace behind. If Yang Zixuan were here, he would definitely recognize Dean's identity when he saw this scene, because his Fi Hung Strike has become his unique signature. No one knows his real name, but he has a nickname, Fi Hung Assassin. Although he is not a certified player, his strength is lower than that of certified players, and he is enough to rank among the top 20 recognized masters. However, what Dean never expected was that in the face of a fatal blow, a normal person would have to dodge in a hurry or block with all his strength, but Su Tong was different. This guy didn't know when a light yellow spear appeared in his hand, and he was stabbing his heart with all his strength. His eyes were blazing with fire, and there was no awe of death at all. Dean raised his eyebrows slightly, and in the flash of lightning, more than a dozen thoughts flashed through his mind. He was sure to kill him with 1 blow, but facing the opponent's crazy blow, he would be seriously injured even if he didn't die. Death for injury. Dean didn't hesitate in his heart and gave up the attack decisively. He lightly dodged Su Tong's spear with his toes and his body. The reason for this is not surprising. If the other party is a target that can bring him huge benefits, he will never hesitate to trade death for injury. But the target in front of him was just an unknown player, and it was not worth the price Dean had to pay. Dean's idea was not wrong, but as the figure retreated, he suddenly discovered that the spear in Su Tong's hand had disappeared, replaced by a gesture of holding a fist with his left hand. This made Dean feel a little nervous and have a bad premonition, but he had been following Qian Shu for the past few days, and he naturally got the guidance from Mr. Urgent. He learned the immovable Vajra mantra, the finger-kneading formula, and immediately recited it silently in his heart. Stand up. Unexpectedly, the expected mountain buckle did not come to him. Su Tong slowly raised his head and grinned at Dean. His left hand cupped his fist and his right hand silently raised his ring finger. At this time, Su Tong seemed like a lone wolf who came back for revenge. His usually low-key and silent shell had been completely broken. He gave people the impression of being ferocious, crazy, and with a sharp edge and unruliness. That kind of violent and rational gaze made Dean's heart sink, and he seemed to realize that he had made a big mistake just now and did not try his best to kill this guy. But he no longer had this chance. Su Tong jumped off the terrace, rolled on the ground, and shouted to the messy people behind him, "Hey, Qianju, your immortal stand is no better than this oral, any village guard can break it." His voice was loud enough for everyone to hear clearly. Sitting on the immortal pile. Everyone was stunned when they heard this, and looked strange for a moment, looking askance at Senju himself. Sitting on the immortal pile is a well-known evil technique in the world. Once you are caught, you almost have to wait for death. Moreover, this process is very difficult. It is like someone sitting on your chest, sucking your blood and eating your flesh every day. It becomes heavier and heavier, and the pressure is very painful. It will make you breathless, and finally consume all your energy and energy. Everyone was afraid of Thousand Hands, probably because of the immortal stake, but they didn't expect that there was a way to break this evil spell, and that the way to break it would be so simple. Regardless of whether the statement is true or not, just by looking at Senju's trembling fists, you can tell how deep the emotions in Senju's heart are at this moment. After all, it was a special skill. If Su Tong said something like this, it would probably spread throughout the world in the near future. Even an old Voldemort from a city like Thousand Hands would be very angry at this time. Kill him. It's useless to say anything now. I can't kill all the old guys around me, otherwise my Bamang conference will be a mess. I can only vent my anger on Su Tong. Since this kid dares to come here to cause trouble, then just take his head and give Shueigui a big gift. I come. Mr. Urgent jumped down from the terrace, intending to make up for the regret of not being able to fight in the last round. But immediately after, two other people were seen jumping down. One of these two people is named Ci-Min and the other is Jian Cheng. They are both newcomers who have come to worship Jian Hand. Su Tong took a look and saw that these two were exactly the two players. Together with the one who had just attacked him, half of the 5 players who had arrived this time had already arrived. The two people jumped down and saw that they were heading for their prop book. Time is running out, don't delay, the 3 of you come together and kill him as soon as possible. Thousand Hands would not do the thing of giving away people one by one, no, it should be said that I have already suffered such a loss last time. I have a better memory this time, so I might as well do it together. After all, fighting for one's life is better than watching a group fight to relieve one's anger. Etc. Seeing that the 3 men had surrounded him, Su Tong quickly waved to stop. Don't listen to this kid's nonsense, kill him first. Jian Hand acted vigorously and resolutely, this time he was determined to kill this brat. Then take his head and give it to yourself as a sacrificial flag. How dare you? When Su Tong heard this, he sneered and pointed at the huge lantern above his head. Believe it or not, I will blow up that thing right now. When everyone looked up, their expressions suddenly changed. I saw a huge paper man climbing up on the lantern at some point. Some people took a closer look and recognized it immediately. Wasn't this the same thing that exploded at the freight station that day? Suddenly, everyone's expressions changed drastically, and they quickly shouted to stop. Monk Ming also ran to Kinju. He was also a personal participant at the freight station that day and knew the power of this thing's explosion. After hearing what Monk Ming said, Kinju immediately told Mr. Hypnosis and the 3 men to stop. It turns out that Su Tong's commotion just now created an opportunity for Big Fatty to quickly flash onto the lantern in his ghost form. Otherwise, how could he happily run to the wolf's den and wait to sacrifice the flag to Jian Hand and the others? Woolen cloth? Boy! Don't mess around, otherwise even if that old guy Shueigui comes today, he won't be able to save you. Jian Shu's expression cannot be seen clearly under the mask, but from his voice, it is certain that Jian Shu is stronger than Su Tong at this moment. Be nervous. After all, this is just the beginning. Once the well of rebirth is destroyed, all their efforts will be in vain. When you say that, I really want to try it. Let's see if my master is coming. Can you guys really be able to stop me? Don't. 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 We have something to discuss. Yes, yes, yes. It's easy to discuss, little brother, don't mess around. The faces of everyone changed greatly, fearing that this guy would go crazy. Since the last time he was at the freight station and he did not hesitate to cause a big explosion, they gave Su Tong the nickname Zhao Kuangsheng. This kid is really desperate for his life. If he is angered and destroys the well of life, today's matter will become a big deal. Once the well above is destroyed, the ghosts in this ghost market will not explode. The most terrifying thing is that if these ghosts escape back and complain to the underworld, they will be in big trouble. Ha 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 ha. Seeing the frightened expressions of these old guys, Su Tong laughed instead and looked at Jian Hans with squinted eyes. Old guy, I'm standing here now, aren't you going to kill me? Why don't you do it? Qinju not only wanted to kill him, but also wanted to tear this kid's skin apart. But at this moment, Su Tong grabbed the vital point, and for a while he was riding a tiger and was unable to get off. At this time, I saw Su Tong extending his palm towards Jianshu. I don't want much, just one thing. Whatever you robbed me before, give me now. Take it and let me go. If you don't give it to me, I will blow up this thing. When everyone heard this, they immediately cursed this guy in their hearts and called him a lion. But after a loud curse, everyone focused their attention on Jianshu. There were 4 fairy treasure fragments in total. Not long ago, Fenglai Tower was sealed. It is said that the one held by the owner of Fenglai Tower has also fallen into Shuigui's hand, plus the one originally held by this boy. Give it, someone finally whispered to Qinju. Qinju was startled and looked sideways. The person who spoke was an old man from the northeast. He was quite senior. As soon as he spoke, others also started to persuade him. Qinju, give it. It's about everyone's lives, as long as the last piece is in our hands, even if he takes 3 pieces, it will be in vain. Yes, senior, if he blows up the lantern, so many ghosts will come back. Give it to him. We have merit to protect ourselves and we don't have to worry about losing this piece of jade. The worst we can do is grab it back. Everyone was shouting, Qinzhao's teeth were trembling with anger, and he scanned the crowd with squinted eyes. You! Monk Ming shouted with a dark face, what do you mean? It's a pity that no one paid attention to him because of his soft words, and his voice was soon drowned in the crowd's persuasion. Qinju was angry at first, but then gradually calmed down. Looking at the kind faces in front of him, his heart suddenly became cold. I tried my best to help these old guys, but I didn't expect that these people would force me to hand over the fairy treasure in order to protect themselves. People are unpredictable. He boasts that he has seen through the changes in the world's situation and can raise his arms and have all the heroes respond. However, he didn't expect that today he would let a junior teach him a real lesson. Seeing everyone getting more and more excited as they talked, Jianshu suddenly felt a sense of insight in his heart. He waved his hand to signal everyone to quiet down, and looked at Su Tong. I'll give you what you want. As he spoke, Qinju jumped off the terrace, took out a fluorescent jade piece from his sleeve, reached out and stroked the jade piece and walked forward step by step. As he walked, he spoke to himself in a voice that only he could hear. Said softly. You should share the same faults with others, and you should not share the same merits with others. If you share the same merits, you should avoid each other. This sentence comes from Cai Gentan, a Confucian classic in the Ming dynasty. The general idea is that people can only share adversity, but not wealth. Once they share wealth, they will inevitably become suspicious. Qinju already understood what these old guys were thinking. I even think it's ridiculous, I'm afraid these people came to Bamang in the first place. But when they learned that Shuigui would stop them and even kill them one by one, they gave up and backed down like Master Chu Zhao. In order to cheer up these strangers, I did not hesitate to take responsibility for the cause and effect, stepped on the red line, and gave these old guys a big opportunity. I felt that as long as the cats tasted fish, they would not be afraid that they would not eat the fish. He thought it was a brilliant method, but little did he know that his idea was completely digging his own grave. Even if there is no brat like Zhao Jian to cause trouble today, even if the ghost market is successfully completed today, and everyone has gained 10, 20, or even 30 years of merit, will they still follow him to fight with Shuigui? With such a large amount of merit, they can correct their 3 shortcomings and 5 shortcomings, and even extend their lives without any problem. Why do you still want to go to Buman Mountain with you to fight for your life? Kinju felt a burst of self-mockery in his heart. Had he forgotten? Forget. He had completely forgotten why these people came all the way to L City, and why they dared to take the huge risk with him. Isn't it just because they have been forced to have no choice but to let them breathe a sigh of relief and let these old guys linger for more than 10 years? Thinking of this, Kinju couldn't help but laugh at himself. He was so young that he didn't even understand such a simple truth. It was really ridiculous. He handed the jade piece in his hand to Su Tong. When Su Tong was about to reach out to take it, he subconsciously glanced at the two pairs of eyes under the thousand hands mask, and saw that the cold eyes were as vicious as a poisonous snake. Su Tong's heart suddenly there was a thump. Without thinking, he suddenly retracted his hand, decisively activated the magic power, and smacked Kinju, but Kinju seemed to have been prepared for it. With a backhand strike, a terrible force came and shattered the magic flame. Su Tong's arms went numb, and his body trembled and he quickly retreated. Seeing Kinju slowly taking off his mask, revealing his terrifying face, his eyes were full of indifference, and he whispered, "Since we can't share wealth and honor, it's better to share adversity. This is just one update today. I have something going on at home, so don't wait any longer." Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 254. Seeing Qian Shao take action, Su Tong immediately ordered Big Fatty to destroy the paper lantern above his head. In fact, he had already made up his mind that no matter whether Kinju gave him the fairy treasure fragment or not, he would destroy it. This has nothing to do with integrity, because I said from the beginning that I just promised not to explode. In fact, if you think about it, you will know, does this thing still need to explode? It's all made of paper and there's no need to let the big fat one blow himself up. Besides, self-destruction costs nothing. 300 points for the script. Who will write it for me? I saw the big fat man stretched out 1,000 claws after changing his form. The densely packed tentacles were like countless iron hooks, grabbing the lantern and pulling hard. There was a stab sound. It was not loud, but it was no less than thunder on the ground when it reached everyone's ears. When he looked up, he saw that the lantern had been torn apart by the big fat man. No. Seeing this scene, everyone's mentality was about to explode, and some people rushed frantically to stop it. But how could their speed compare to Big Fat's destructive power? The paper lantern was torn open by the big fat man, and a big hole came out. This lantern looks big, but it actually uses the principle of the Kongming lantern. The lantern itself is very light. Once the paper is broken, it will be destroyed immediately. When everyone rushed up, they found that the lantern had been ignited by the flames and turned into a ball of fire. Big Fatty was directly recalled by Su Tong and disappeared in front of everyone. Boom! The lantern fell, and the well below also fell down, and the fire directly ignited the surrounding buildings. It's over. Seeing this scene, everyone's heart suddenly went cold. When they looked at Su Tong again, their eyes wanted to cut him into pieces. But they had no time to rush up to settle the score with Su Tong, because they were in greater trouble and had no time to take care of Su Tong. Without the illumination of this lantern, the other sky-reaching lanterns around them immediately dimmed. What is even more frightening is that the marks of the underworld on these wandering souls have also been restored, and a hazy black mist is emitting from their bodies, making these wandering souls think. Recover gradually. This time the whole ghost market was in a state of panic. For a moment, ghosts cried and howled, and the densely packed wandering souls let out sharp roars, and immediately turned into a black light flying into the air, forming a terrifying torrent of darkness in the gathering of countless black lights. A disciple who didn't know whose family he was stared blankly at the torrent rushing towards him. By the time he regained consciousness and wanted to dodge, it was already too late. His figure was instantly swallowed up by the torrent, and a moment later only a pile of bloody bones were left scattered on the ground. No. Hurry, kill them. Seeing the wandering souls running wild, an old man showed a ruthless look in his eyes. If he couldn't get it, then he would destroy it completely. In short, he couldn't let these wandering souls escape, not even one of them. Everyone nodded. Although they did not initiate this incident, Yin Cao did not care about it. At this moment, he could only kill and use thunderous means to keep everyone safe. Suddenly, these old guys started to take action. The talismans, spells, and techniques were all smashed down, knocking the ghosts to pieces on the spot. But there are too many of them, and these wandering souls are not stupid. They can't defeat the old ones like you. They turn around and split into dozens of black mist to hunt down the juniors. This made the old guys on the terrace very anxious. The disciples they brought this time were scattered all over the ghost market, so that they could release the sky lanterns to harvest merit. Everyone divides an area and no one is next to each other, so as to avoid conflicts. But now he has become the target of revenge in the eyes of wandering souls. Seeing their disciples being torn into pieces by a group of wandering spirits before they even had time to scream, the eyes of these old guys turned red. In fact, I don't blame people for being cruel. If it were you, you came home from the holiday and went to the ghost market to buy something, but you were humming a little song and someone dragged you into the car and treated you as if you were free. The labor force was sold abroad to work as coolies. Wouldn't you be angry if it were you? These wandering souls obviously won't stop until you're bleeding like a river. Su Tong looked at the chaos in front of him and cursed in his heart, but he turned to look at Kinju with a complicated expression. He saw that the old guy took off his mask, revealing a face that had been burned by the fire, cold and stern. His eyes looked scarier than those of ghosts. He admits that he underestimated Kinju, just as Kinju underestimated everyone's mentality of being a little rich. Seeing these people continue to survive just because they make a fortune, how can thousand hands make everyone happy? Since you don't have the ambition to match mine, then I will help you get your ambition back, even if you can. For this reason, he would not hesitate to turn against me. You. Very good. Qian Shu squinted his eyes and stared at Su Tong with his eyes slightly lowered. The expression on his face was unclear whether he should be joking, angry, or both. But at least one thing is certain. Su Tong can clearly feel Qian Shu's determination to kill him at this moment from 5 or 6 meters away. Do it, Qian Shu snorted coldly, and 3 black shadows came out from behind him, all charging at Su Tong. Moreover, the attack was a decisive move, leaving no chance for Su Tong to survive. Boy, let me see what you can do. Mr. Urgent raised his hand, and a dim light appeared in his palm. He took the lead to kill Su Tong. A set of palm techniques came at him, and his eyes were filled with after images. The swipes became fiercer and fiercer, and the palm power became more and more terrifying, like a snowball. Seeing this, Su Tong could only retreat. He had the blessing of close combat skills, but close combat skills were simply child's play in front of people like Mr. Urgent. After all, fighting skills are mainly about fighting, and when it comes to killing people, they are not good at it. Not even a little bit. However, as soon as he took a few steps back, a black bottle suddenly fell at his feet without any warning, and shattered on the ground with a pop. In this short moment, an invisible shockwave appeared centered on the impact point, spreading to 5 meters away. Wherever the shockwave passed, large groups of yellow-green toxic clouds were formed. Su Tong immediately felt his body sink, and all the muscles in his body stiffened. It's poison. He looked back and saw that it was the player named Cimi. This guy grinned at Su Tong and said with a silly smile, "Brother, if you want to blame it, it's your bad luck." As he said this, the guy actually threw out a few more bottles. The bottles exploded around Su Tong, and poisons of various colors surrounded him. It's just that a violent wind suddenly blew up among the poisonous substances. The skill Extreme Flame Turbine was activated, and Su Tong clasped his hands together. The black corrosive fire rotated rapidly in his palms, and erupted with terrible suction. Under the strong wind, it actually absorbed all the surrounding poisonous gas. What's even weirder is that the corrosive fire that has absorbed the poisonous mist also emits strange colors. With a push of his hands, traces of fire suddenly surged, and countless tiny flames suddenly exploded in the air. These flashing flames fell on the ground, not only corroding a hole in the ground, but also filling the air with a thorn. No smell. Mr. Urgent was caught off guard, took a whiff, and suddenly felt dizzy. Get away, Ci-Men didn't expect that he would be self-defeating. Instead of helping, he let this kid use his strength out of thin air. He yelled angrily and hurriedly ran forward and took out a bottle to detoxify Mr. Urgent. But how could Su Tong miss such a good opportunity? As soon as he regained his footing, a cold light flashed in his eyes. He raised his pistol, pointed it at Mr. Urgent and pulled the trigger. Bang! 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 4 bullets exploded in a stream of sparks in front of Mr. Urgent, and an invisible wall stood in front of him. Boy, it's great to have a pistol. Look at this. Yang Jiancheng stood aside and took out something from the prop book in a hurry. Su Tong's pupils tightened, and when he saw what Yang Jiancheng was holding, he jumped out decisively. Da blue sparks were released from the muzzle, and Su Tong rolled on the ground and hid back, regardless of his embarrassment. Suddenly, his shoulders sank, followed by a heartbreaking pain. There was a bullet hole in his shoulder, and blood flowed out uncontrollably. Seeing this, Su Tong's mouth twitched. As the saying goes, Qingshan Tower outside the mountain, Gao Zhou can get pistols from outside the border, and naturally there are people who can get weapons from abroad. I just didn't expect that this player's firepower was so strong that he actually got a submachine gun. Thinking of this, he looked back at a corner and then looked into the distance, only to see those rioting ghosts frantically hunting those young strangers. Seeing their disciples and grandsons being killed like crazy, those old guys could only give up holding a group and start to spread out to protect their disciples. But this would not be a good situation for those old guys. After all, so many wandering souls were rushing towards them. It is difficult for just 1 or 2 people to deal with it. Seeing the number of casualties increasing, Su Tong gritted his teeth, stood up and ran to the other side while the opponent was changing his magazine. Now is not the time to reveal the last trump card. He needs to delay for some more time to let these wandering spirits cause greater casualties to these strangers as much as possible. Only in this way can we further share the pressure for Master. While running, Su Tong casually took out 2 paper figures and threw them on the ground. At the same time, he couldn't help but secretly regretted that the little fat man was picked up by someone after being struck by lightning, otherwise he wouldn't need to be so passive. Can you run away? When the 3 of them saw that Su Tong was injured, they immediately rushed to catch up, even though their speed was much slower than Su Tong's. Especially Yang Jiancheng, the submachine gun in his hand was filled with bullets when Su Tong saw it. It seemed that this guy must have some prop card bonus. The angle of the bullets was particularly tricky, and Su Tong almost didn't dodge it several times. Fortunately, he has 2 full quality bonuses that make him agile enough, otherwise he would really have to explain it here. He rolled and jumped onto the pontoon again. The bullet almost flew past him. He saw a store door open in front of him. Seeing this, Su Tong did not hesitate. He quickly hid in and quickly closed the door. He just breathed a sigh of relief. But when he raised his head, he was stunned for a moment. He tilted his neck and stared at the dozen figures in front of him, grinning and saying, "Huh? Hee, interesting. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 255. The blurry figures in the darkness gradually became clearer, and the solemn faces gave people a cold feeling. Su Tong took a closer look and realized that these people were actually wax figures. He ran all the way and accidentally broke into a wax figure shop. But what Su Tong cares more about than these wax figures is the sign hanging on the chest of the wax figure in front of him. There were only 3 words written on the sign: "Don't light the lamp." Interesting, Su Tong dragged his chin, wondering what would happen if he clicked on it. He raised his eyebrows, took off the sign on the chest of the wax man with a smile, threw it into the prop book, and walked into the depths of the wax figure. Buzz. Not long after, the door was gently pushed open, and the shadows of 3 people peeked in from outside the door. When he saw a dozen figures inside the door, Yang Jiancheng subconsciously raised the gun in his hand and fired a wave of fire. Don't. Fortunately, at this moment, Mr. Urging on the side grabbed the muzzle of the gun, and then glared at Yang Jiancheng. "I don't want my life." After speaking, he took a closer look and found that the figures inside were all wax figures. "Sir, aren't they just a few wax figures? Are they worth making such a fuss about?" Yang Jiancheng curled his lips in disapproval. The urging man immediately frowned when he heard this. These young men were very powerful, but they all looked like they were stunned. He could only slow down his voice and whispered, "This is a ghost market. The things in the ghost market, you don't have to buy it, but you can't take it lightly. There are many weird things that I can't even tell what they are, but if you're not careful, it can even kill you." Yang Jiancheng put down the gun. Although his face still looked disapproving, he also remained alert in his heart. They have not been in this world for a long time. They jumped in halfway and do not know the main theme of the script world very well. But after these few days of contact, I have learned a little bit about it. This world is full of all kinds of weird killing techniques. After listening to what Mr. Urgent said, I will naturally be more wary. But, they were just a little more vigilant, at least in their hearts there was far less awe than what Mr. Urgent said. "Look." Xiamen pointed at the blood stains on the ground and saw the blood stains extending into the depths of the waxman hall. The 3 of them looked at each other and walked in. The waxman shop is not an ordinary shop. The huge space extends to who knows where. There are street view buildings arranged around it. It looks like another street. All kinds of wax figures stand there, and their lively expressions look almost no different than a living person. But it was dark inside, and it was blurry from a distance. "How about, I still have an explosive bag in my hand, just blow it up." Yang Jiancheng looked at the dark waxman hall, feeling repelled by this kind of place. He had a prop card that could provide dynamic vision, and his eyesight was much better than that of normal people, but it didn't mean that he could be in such a dark place. Can see much farther than ordinary people. The corner of Mr. Urgent's mouth twitched a few times, and as he thought that what he just said was in vain, he shook his head firmly and said, "No." Then, "By the way, don't you know how to use poison? Pour poison inside. Poison him to death." Yang Jiancheng turned around and looked at Simon. Simon smiled bitterly when he heard this. "It's not easy to put all my wealth in such a big place. It won't work this way, and that won't work either. Do you want to just watch him heal in there?" Yang Jiancheng's suggestions were rejected time and time again, and he suddenly felt a little annoyed. What he was most worried about was finally injuring the opponent. If the opponent was given enough time to use medicine to recover from the wound, it would be the biggest disadvantage for them. Seeing that Yang Jiancheng was about to get angry, Xiamen immediately advised him, "Don't be anxious, don't be anxious. What you said is not unreasonable. This place is so weird. If you blow it up rashly, you will definitely find something wrong. Isn't it just bad? Look at me." Xiamen said and took out 3 glass beads the size of fingernails from his arms. The glass bead was hollow, and there was a very small bug inside, which could not be seen unless you looked carefully. Simon held the glass bead in his hand and shook it a few times. The bug inside was shaken by Simon and immediately started to fly in the glass bead. At the same time, its body shone brightly and became brighter and brighter. Simon waved his hand and sprinkled the glass beads on the ground. He saw 3 glass beads rolling quickly into the darkness. Each glass bead illuminated the surrounding area of 5 or 6 meters. What was embarrassing was that the 3 glass beads, the area that can be illuminated is no more than the light of a firefly candle to the wax figure museum in front of me. That's it, why not hold up a torch? Hey, isn't there a candle? Yang Jiancheng curled his lips, turned around and saw the candle on the side. His eyes lit up, and he walked forward and lit the candle. Although the candle is not big, it immediately lights up the surroundings after being lit. What is even more unexpected is that as this candle is lit, other candles around it actually light up. One candle at a time dispersed the darkness in the waxman hall. Mr. Urging's heart tightened, and he quickly became alert, cursing this bastard in his heart for knowing how to do something wrong. But after waiting for a while and seeing that there was nothing unusual, I felt relieved. Cut. Seeing his startled look, Yang Jiancheng couldn't help but despise Mr. Urgent. He immediately put away the submachine gun and replaced it with a long knife. Seeing Mr. Urgent looking at him with a strange expression, Yang Jiancheng raised his eyebrows. Actually, swords are my forte. After saying that, he stepped forward and walked in front, with Simon following closely behind. Seeing the two walking in front of him, Mr. Urging sneered in his heart and followed them leisurely. The 3 of them walked forward along the blood trail, but they felt more and more frightened as they walked. After all, the wax figures around them are so realistic. I don't know whether it's intentional or a problem with the producer's skill. Every face of the wax figures here looks expressionless. Staring at them with empty eyes, he didn't feel anything at first, but as time went on he began to feel more and more uncomfortable. Damn it, what the hell is this place, what are you doing this? Gradually, not to mention Yang Jiancheng, even Mr. Kui Ming began to murmur in his heart, thinking, I haven't heard of any waxman magic. Huh. At this time, the 3 of them discovered that the blood stains on the ground suddenly disappeared. Why did you recover so quickly? Seeing the blood stains disappear, Yang Jiancheng felt very uncomfortable. He secretly cursed the urging man for being too troublesome. If he had listened to him and blown up the place, it would have been over. After delaying for so long, the wound had already recovered. In fact, what Yang Jiancheng didn't know was that Su Tong's wound had not recovered. The shot hit his shoulder and even broke the bone. But Su Tong had the Miao healing medicine, the special bonus of his dark constitution, and his professional hemostatic techniques to stop the bleeding in such a short time. Don't panic, this guy can't hide far, he's right here. Mr. Urgent signaled the 2 of them to calm down, but his palms began to sweat, so the 3 of them continued to move forward. On the other side, Su Tong has reached the end of the wax museum. There was a festival in front of me, the ground was covered with candies and flowers, and of course they were made of wax. Then I saw the newlyweds walking towards the door of their house under the red lights and candles. It felt extra festive without any need to exaggerate. I couldn't help but curiously lifted the bride's hijab and took a look. Not to mention that she looked pretty good. You silly boy are blessed, he pointed to the groom and glanced at the bride's chest, smiling, at least you and the child will not be short of milk in the future. Let's discuss something and let your wife use it. You just agreed without saying anything. The groom still had a silly smile on his face. Seeing that he didn't speak, Su Tong took it as his acquiescence. He was about to untie the bride's clothes, but when he turned his eyes, he suddenly saw the old couple standing straight beside him, and his eyelids gradually narrowed. Come into a seam. Look. This way. After about a few minutes, The footsteps of the three people got closer and closer, and Yang Jiancheng and the others stepped forward to take a look. Under the festive lights in front of me, I saw huge characters posted on the wall, and the faces of the wax figures finally seemed to have different expressions. The groom had a silly smile on his face, holding the red rope on the bride's hand with one hand, as if walking forward. Following closely behind was a group of people playing gongs and drums. The three of them looked around, but did not see Su Tong. At this time, Zhao Jiancheng glanced sideways at the hijab-covered bride, raised his eyebrows, and suddenly swung the long knife in his hand to lift the hijab. But after seeing the bride's beautiful baby face, Zhao Jiancheng breathed a sigh of relief. "You're overthinking it. You didn't see that girl's breasts are so big. How could he be pretending to be a bride?" Min couldn't help laughing when he saw this. "Stop talking nonsense and look for it quickly. I always feel that something is getting more and more wrong with this place, and I can't tell what is wrong." Zhao Jiancheng wiped the sweat from his forehead. He took a step forward, but at this moment Mr. Urgent suddenly grabbed the two of them. "Wait." The two of them looked at him doubtfully. Mr. Urgent wiped the sweat from his forehead and frowned. "Don't you think, this place is getting hotter and hotter?" When Mr. Urgent said this, Zhao Jiancheng and Simon realized that they had been sweating since they didn't know when. "No, let's go back." Mr. Urgent didn't know what was coming to his mind. He just felt that the bad feeling was getting stronger and stronger. Although he had never heard of any sorcery related to wax figures, there must be a monster when something went wrong. He couldn't help but be careless. After finishing speaking, regardless of whether Zhao Jiancheng agreed or not, he pulled the two of them back, but after taking a few steps, the urging man who was walking in front suddenly froze and his eyes widened. "I can only see the direction in which the candle light came from, but I don't know when it went out." They stared ahead and saw that the road was tightly blocked by wax figures. The empty eyes of these wax figures stared at them, and an indescribable smile appeared on their originally indifferent faces. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 256. What's going on? Looking at the dense wall of people in front of them, the three of them were shocked. Min said with a ghostly expression, "Are these wax figures alive?" It's okay if he doesn't say this, but no one will feel cold when he says it. Mr. Urgent screamed in his heart. They had the ability to deal with those ghosts, but they were not sure at all about the weird things in the ghost market. After all, the ghost market itself is a place that hides evil, and too many shady things are stored in the ghost market. If there really is something taboo, they might have to explain it here today. If it doesn't work, let's step on their heads and get out. Yang Jiancheng took a look at the heights of these people and thought that this might be a solution. However, when he said this suggestion, he was severely despised by Min and Mr. Ji Ming. "You don't even know whether this thing is dead or alive, yet you still want to jump out on someone's head." Mr. Urgent did not speak, and his silent attitude clearly indicated that he no longer wanted to deal with this idiot. "Brother, I really doubt how you survived 5 scripts until now. Is it destiny for the European emperor?" Min couldn't help but sarcastically said. Yang Jiancheng's mouth twitched. In fact, he didn't tell Min that he was really lucky. The 5 scripts were not very difficult. The highest was only 4 people. Moreover, the 4 people had no camp nature. In addition, he bought them from abroad. The firearms allow him to occupy an absolute C position in the low difficulty scenario world. So every time he has to do something with his brain, someone else does it, and he just has to do it. Now do you expect some wisdom to suddenly pop into his head? Obviously there is some difficulty. "This road is blocked, let's go back." Mr. Urgent wiped the sweat from his face and looked at it for a long time. In the end, he did not dare to take the risk and took the two of them back to the wedding scene, planning to find another way to get there. At this time, The three of them were no longer thinking about Sutong, but started to find a way out wholeheartedly. Across the road where the groom meets his bride, there is the setting of a house. At this time, Simon saw a door with the word on it. It looked like it was a new house being prepared. When Simon was about to open the door and go in, he suddenly heard a scream from behind him. The sound came so suddenly that Simon almost jumped in surprise when his hand shook. He shrunk and a glass bottle of medicine appeared in his hand. When he looked back, he saw that it was Yang Jiancheng who had done something wrong. Seeing him sitting on the ground, Simon immediately yelled, "What are you shouting for?" Yang Jiancheng got up from the ground, took a look at the sticky stuff on his feet, and couldn't help cursing, "I didn't know this thing was so soft, it feels like mud when you step on it, and it's all bare." The urging man was standing behind Yang Jiancheng. Hearing this, he came over and took a look. Sure enough, he saw a ball of pink wax oil on the soles of Yang Jiancheng's feet. These are flower petals made of wax. They are scattered on the ground in bits and pieces. Let's be careful. This thing seems to have melted. Then it won't melt. The temperature here is so high. It would be strange if it doesn't melt. Yang Jiancheng got up with a curse, but when he turned his head, he saw that the urging man turned his head with a strange look on his face, and his face became increasingly ugly. "Gentlemen." Seeing the strange look on the man's face, Yang Jiancheng couldn't help shouting, but the man covered his mouth and made a silent gesture towards the two of them, and then pointed his hand in the direction of the groom and bride. The two of them followed his hand and saw drops of wax dripping down the groom's and their faces. After the wax melted away, the groom's face was elongated for a moment, and his facial features were pulled together into a ball. The weird face looked numb. Da-da-da-da. A piece of wax fell from the groom's chin, revealing the black flesh underneath. The three of them watched with wide eyes, and saw the wax piece falling off the groom's body faster and faster. The three of them couldn't help but gulp when the black flesh under the wax block was gradually exposed, revealing a pair of slender claws. "Isn't there a big rice dumpling inside?" Simon asked with a trembling voice. The urging man didn't answer, but he thought to himself, "It would be fine if it were a zongzi, but this hand doesn't look like a human hand." Crack. At this time, there was a sound, and the three of them looked up. The sound came from the bride. They saw two round objects on the ground, which were the murder weapons that Sutong had just praised. Without these two burdens, the bride's body immediately began to move. Her body made a stiff twisting sound. Two pairs of green eyes moved up and down in the deformed eye sockets. Then she turned her eyes and suddenly looked towards three people. "Do it." When Mr. Urgent looked over with green eyes, he felt a chill all over his body and yelled at Yang Jiancheng. Yang Jiancheng finally reacted and quickly took out his submachine gun and aimed it at the bride. Passed. Sparks flew from the muzzle of the gun, and the bullet instantly shattered the bride into pieces. However, when the three of them looked again, all they had broken was an empty shell. Above, Simon's eyes rolled around, and suddenly he saw a dark thing squatting there on the mud tiles above his head, his eyes like a pair of imperial green emeralds shining fluorescently in the darkness. Without saying a word, Yang Zikan raised his gun and started shooting, but the thing flashed and disappeared. The next second, when a black shadow flashed in front of the three people's eyes, Simon hurriedly threw out a few glass beads, and then the glass beads shimmered with light, and the three people finally saw clearly the true appearance of the thing. It is said to be a human, but not a human, and it is not like a monkey even if it is said to be a monkey. It has a black head, a face covered with black hair, and its limbs and body look similar to those of a human, but it is crawling on the ground. This thing. Mr. Urgent was well informed, but when he saw this thing, he couldn't remember it at all. He just felt that it seemed to be somewhat impressive in his memory, but he couldn't remember its origin for a while. "Oh my God, stop thinking about it and run away." At this time, Min's face suddenly turned gray, and they saw the groom's two glowing green eyes looking towards them. Not only the groom, but also the bearers behind the sedan who were beating gongs and drums to carry the sedan. Even the little maid's eyes are green. As soon as the three of them took a look at the green eyes, they were so scared that they dared to stay any longer and ran away. Min walked in front and pointed to the door in front. As he spoke, he threw a few medicine bottles casually, and the medicine bottles exploded under the feet of the three of them, emitting a stream of purple smoke. The three of them took a deep breath and immediately felt light all over, and their speed increased a lot. At this time, Yang Jiancheng finally showed his true ability. Looking at the black shadow that suddenly rushed up from the side, he put away the submachine gun in his hand, suddenly pulled out the long knife in his hand, leaned over and aimed at the black shadow to slash at it. The black shadow sensed the danger and immediately pounced forward, but in the next second, Yang Jiancheng's figure had appeared behind the black shadow. His sprinting posture was similar to the Japanese in the anti-Japanese war, shouting on board to ambush. A low body charge is no different. Wind slash. The moment the blade slashed down, it was as if thousands of cold lights burst out from the blade, immediately slashing the black shadow away. Buzz. As the long sword was sheathed, Yang Jiancheng wanted to pretend to be a wave, but when he saw it, he found that the black shadow that had been chopped away actually stood up staggeringly. He suddenly cursed in his heart and did not dare to pretend any more. 13 Put away the long knife and run away. Boom. Min kicked the door open. After the three of them rushed in, they immediately turned around and slammed the door shut. Boom, boom, boom. Suddenly, the door trembled, and the violent slamming sound was like a heavy hammer hitting the hearts of the three of them. I remember. Mr. Urgent held the door with his hands, sweat dripping down his face, as if he finally remembered the origin of these things. His eyes flashed, and he carefully recalled the book he read. This thing arrived. What is this? Seeing that the urging man was silent, Simon couldn't help but ask loudly. It's a ghost, Mr. Urgent thought for a long time and didn't remember that he read it in that book. He only remembered that he had read the contents. They all say that they are the slaves of tigers. They say that there is a kind of evil demon tiger in the mountains. After eating people, they spit out the bones and then turn into ghosts and imprison them around them for its use. She often turns into a beautiful woman to lure businessmen on the roadside into the mountains, where she becomes the delicacy of the demon tiger. It is written in the book that this ghost has been imprisoned for a long time and cannot be transformed. It looks like a human being and moves like a cat. It eats carrion, is cunning and changeable, and cannot be rescued by good methods. For a long time, it is better than entering the demonic realm and not being able to be reincarnated. Hearing what Mr. Urgent said, Yang Jiancheng couldn't help but complain, there is still this thing. Sir, aren't you very good at dealing with ghosts? Is there any way? Mr. Urgent rolled his eyes at him and thought, if there was a way for him to follow them and hide here? He is not good at magic. If Han Zhonglong or Thousand Hands were around, he might have a way to deal with these things. I am afraid it would be difficult to deal with this thing with his own methods. But those words hurt his prestige. He glanced around and found that the room was empty. He felt relieved and said, fortunately, this place is very safe. Let's hide here and wait for now. Hearing this, Yang Jiancheng and Simon could only nod their heads and said, that's fine. Fortunately, there is no such dirty thing in the bridal chamber. Let's fix it up and then think of a solution. But at this moment, they heard a hoarse voice above their heads, that's not necessarily the case. The three of them were startled when they heard the words, and slowly raised their heads. They saw a man and a woman hanging in the air on the beam. Judging from their happy outfits, they knew that these should be the groom's parents. Among them, the wax on the face of the female ghost on the left has fallen off, revealing a thin, monkey-like face and sharp nails, and she is hanging in the air and struggling. When people get married, their weddings are decorated with lanterns and colorful decorations, and their new houses are filled with balloons. Have you ever heard of them hanging your parents? Besides, it's not appropriate. You and the bride are making trouble, and your parents are watching from above. How worried are you? Seeing that there were two ghosts hanging above the head, the expressions on the three people's faces turned cold. Fortunately, Mr. Urgent was still able to remain calm at the critical moment. When he saw this, he hurriedly said, "Don't panic. Hold the door first. Don't you see that they are hanging on it and can't get out? What are you afraid of?" Yes, when Yang Jiancheng and Ci-Min heard this, they felt relieved. But at this moment, when they looked up, their eyes suddenly widened. I saw that the male ghost actually took out a pair of scissors at this time, aimed at the rope buckle on the neck of the female ghost next to him, cut it, and said with a silly smile, "Hey, isn't it going down now?" Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 257. Snapped. The woman fell to the ground on all fours, and the wax on her body was shattered. Then she stood up slowly under the horrified eyes of the three people. Two pairs of green eyes stared at the three people in front of them, spinning around. As if choosing prey, he opened his mouth and pounced on Ci-Min, who seemed to be the weakest among the three. The three of them were holding the door with both hands, and their faces turned green when they saw this thing rushing towards them. Mr. Urging Master gritted his teeth and roared, "You guys hold on, I'll do it." After saying that, he raised his palms boldly and moved the sky and the earth to support him. There was a dark force between his hands. Listen carefully, there was the sound of wind and thunder. It seems that in order to survive, Mr. Mengming is also fighting for his life at this moment. He does not hesitate to hurt himself and forcefully activates the last move of Ji Xing Shao. The purpose is to be able to severely damage the ghost with one move. As he waved his hand, he saw traces of lightning flashing in his palm. The demon ghost is not afraid when she sees this. Although she has the word ghost in her name, she actually has demonic energy to protect her and sharp claws. Her weapons are fingers. The 10 fingers are like 10 fingers that will bloom when needed. The sharp and cold blade. One person and one ghost suddenly fought fiercely, and the scene instantly became bloody. Mr. Mengming's palm technique is not only fierce, but also has a terrifying secret power. This heart-urging palm is a secret skill that he has practiced hard for many years, but it is useless when it hits the body of the ghost. He hit it 3 times in a row. Next, he could only injure her with the electric current in his palm, but on the other hand, there were indeed more than a dozen wounds on his body. The ghost didn't play any tricks with him at all. He just saw that Mr. Urgent couldn't hurt him, so he pounced on him and caught him. Soon, Mr. Urgent also felt a little tired, and he also had a slight feeling of being exhausted in his body. Whenever the fingers come into contact with the strong flesh of the demon's body, there will be an illusion of extremely cold and hot heat. This feeling lingers for a long time, merging and moving inside the body. It's like a handful of small files, eating away at my physical strength and patience. Seeing that Mr. Urgent was about to lose his ability to resist, Simon gritted his teeth and took out a glass bottle from the prop book with trembling hands. The liquid in this glass bottle turned out to be light gold. Powerful amplification potion. After use, the physical strength is temporarily increased by 100%, the strength and agility are increased by 70%, and there is a 30% chance of additional burning damage when attacking. Duration, 30 minutes. After the effect ends, you will be forced to enter a 12-minute weakness period. Note, the increase in potions cannot be superimposed. Please do not try it lightly. Remember that medicine is 30% poisonous. Looking at this bottle of potion, Ci-Min felt so distressed that his blood began to bleed. He spent a lot of prop points to acquire the materials for this thing, and he finally succeeded in refining it 3 times. If you put this thing on an exhibition and don't have 500 script points, don't even think about it. But seeing that the urging man was almost unable to resist, Min didn't care too much. He raised the bottle and threw it at the urging man. Go on. After saying this, the bottle was thrown out of the air. The urging man didn't even look at what it was. He just heard Min say he drank it in his mouth, and he stretched out his hand to take it. As a result, when I grabbed it with my hand, it felt strange. When I lowered my head and looked at it, my nose suddenly became angry. I saw a leftover banana in my hand. No. It's him. Min pointed his finger in the air. When Mr. Urgent looked up, he remembered that there was someone hanging in the air. But when he looked up, he realized that it was broken. The person hanging in the air had climbed into the room without knowing it. On the beam, what he held in his hand was the potion thrown by Min. But where did this guy get his bananas? This question prompted Mr. Ming to have no time to think about it, as the demon in front of him had already pounced in front of him. Su Tong squatted on the beam, looked at the medicine bottle in his hand, threw it in the prop book, and said, "Oh, what a good thing. The 100% increase in physical strength alone would fetch a huge price at an exhibition, not to mention the 70% increase in strength and agility. I have never seen this thing at an exhibition." When I looked at the mess below, my eyes couldn't help but roll around. This was much more fun than outside. Immediately he looked around and suddenly saw the window in the corner, and his eyes suddenly narrowed into slits. "Oh!" At this time, I heard Mr. Urgent yelling. His hands suddenly exerted force, and his chest was torn to pieces by the nails of the demon. He hugged the demon, and with a strong push, he directly pushed the demon into the corner. You uncle, I will fight with you." Mr. Urgent knew in his heart that he was at the end of his strength, but at the moment he was fighting for a chance to survive, and he didn't care much. His eyes were bloodshot, and he grabbed the two arms of the demon with both hands, as if all the blood in his body was rushing to his arms. The muscles on his arms suddenly swelled up, and the veins were crawling under the skin like earthworms. After twisting hard, there was a rattling sound under the demon's arm. Having lost the space to dodge, the demonic ghost was surprised to find that the gentle force that originally hit him suddenly changed and became violent. It's like a thug ripped off the gauze skirt of the model, or like a college student who has just left school being ravaged by the ruthless reality. Aren't you thick-skinned and thick-skinned? Don't you like to play hard? Watch me crush your bones inch by inch. Mr. Urgent's eyes were red, and he kept pressing his fingers on the two arms of the ghost, pinching upward inch by inch. Every time he pinched a place, he could hear a crack sound. The demon twisted his body crazily in pain, but was unable to break away. He opened his mouth and bit the man's neck with sharp teeth. The skin and flesh were separated in one bite, and blood and flesh splattered. But Mr. Urgent had no intention of letting go at all. Instead, the pain seemed to increase his strength even more. After a while, the ghost couldn't stand it anymore. After all, compared to the pain of flesh and blood, the pain caused by the bones being crushed inch by inch was more unbearable. Until Mr. Urgent pressed his hands along her shoulders and pinched her neck. After the bones under the neck were completely crushed, the rogue fell to the ground like a pile of mud. Plop. After dealing with the evil spirit, Mr. Urgent himself sat down on the ground like a frustrated rubber ball, his coat dyed red with blood. The air was coming in but not coming out, which made Min and Yang Jiancheng afraid to look. However, when they saw the paralyzed ghost in the corner, the two of them breathed a sigh of relief. Min subconsciously said, "It's finally safe." As soon as he finished speaking, he heard a faint chuckle from the side. "God has closed the door for you, let me open a window for you." The two of them felt their hearts pounding, and then they remembered that there was another ghost in the room. When they turned around, they saw that the ghost had already run out, but it didn't matter if he ran out, the window was not closed. "Go close the window!" Sci-Min screamed, and Yang Jiancheng jumped out and tried to close the window, but both of them forgot that this door has two doors. One of them was holding one from behind, but now one suddenly left. With a bang sound, the demons outside the door pushed the door open. Perhaps suddenly, these demons fell to the ground with a crash. At this time, Yang Jiancheng and Simon were stunned. After the two were stunned for a second, Yang Jiancheng gritted his teeth and said, "You hold on." As he said that, he jumped out of the window with a quick step, leaving Simon staring blankly at the rogue who stood up in front of him, and then at the window. After a while, he held back a sentence, "Damn it, Auntie." Yang Jiancheng jumped out of the window and took a look, and found that all the demons had rushed into the room. He couldn't help but secretly said to himself, "Brothers, when disaster strikes, we will fly separately. Next year, I will burn more paper for you today." As he spoke, Yang Jiancheng was about to run, but just as he was about to move, Len Buting felt a chill coming from behind him. The combat experience accumulated in 5 scripts made Yang Jiancheng pounce forward without any hesitation, and at the same time, he used his other hand to he had already taken out his submachine gun and shot behind him. Click, click, click. After firing a bunch of bullets, he saw nothing behind him. He couldn't help but wonder, could he be too sensitive? Just as he was thinking about it, his neck suddenly felt hot, and a stream of heat rushed out. He quickly touched it with his hand and discovered that there was actually a long and thin wound on his neck. The wound was very thin but very deep, and blood was flowing out uncontrollably. "How come? When did you get hurt?" Yang Jiancheng was shocked and quickly took out the medicine to heal his wounds. But before he could take out the medicine, he heard a shout from behind, "Hey!" When Yang Jiancheng looked up, he saw that the demon who had just jumped out of the window was bowing to him with his fists in his hands. Suddenly, streams of black mist-like air blew past in front of him. Yang Jiancheng's vision went dark for an instant. He subconsciously wanted to raise the gun in his hand, but then he realized that he had no feeling at all in his hands and feet. "My mind was spinning for a while, and I vaguely heard a joke. Although superstitious magic may not benefit mankind, it can definitely be useful when it harms others." The sound gradually faded away. Yang Jiancheng tried to hear it but couldn't hear anything anymore. He only felt a sharp pain in his chest. His consciousness soon began to blur. He didn't understand what happened until his death. Looking at the prop book that appeared on Yang Jiancheng's body, Su Tong didn't have time to flip through the prop cards inside page by page, and directly chose to harvest all the prop points. Yang Jiancheng and the others had just entered the script world halfway, and had joined the Kinja camp. Basically, there would be no task consumption, so the script points were pretty good, with a full 470 script points. Although this number is small, for ordinary players, this is already a considerable windfall. The other hand pulled out the dagger stuck in his chest, and glanced at the paper man stuck on his back. When he saw that the blood had stained the paper man red, he gave up the plan of using it. "Do you still remember the paper man you threw on the road when you were running for your life?" When they were chasing him, the paper man had already been attached to the sole of Yang Jiancheng's shoe under Su Tong's control. Only one of the 2 paper figures was successfully attached, but it was enough. Seeing that Yang Jiancheng himself jumped out of the window, he controlled the paper figures to quickly make a cut on Yang Jiancheng's neck. Although the paper man is very thin, the paper itself is very sharp. With the blessing of spiritual enchantment, the paper man's round arms are as sharp as a scalpel. At this time, he saw that the demon in the room was about to come out. As soon as he hid his figure, he hid in a corner and watched coldly. Surprisingly, Ci-Min and Mr. Ji Ming did not die, but were lifted up by the demon and walked towards the small door on the other side. Su Tong was not in a hurry to go out. On the contrary, the more strangers died outside, the better. Not in a hurry, he simply went up to take a look. After passing through the small door, the temperature in front of his eyes was getting hotter and hotter. Su Tong cautiously stuck his head out and looked behind. I saw a large iron pot standing there, with a raging fire underneath the pot and crystal clear wax oil in the pot. Seeing this, Su Tong couldn't help but his eyes lit up, and he thought, it would be so exciting if a basin of water were poured on it at this time. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 258. Of course, this idea only flashed through his mind. What really interested him was the monk sitting in front of the oil pan. No, strictly speaking, it should be a corpse. The monk's corpse is sitting on a decapitated dragon head, with his hands clasped together and holding a string of Buddhist beads. The monk's face is very beautiful, with curved eyebrows, a high nose, a small mouth and thick lips. Although his eyes are closed, he has the feeling of a cat's mouth. If it weren't for his bare chest, at first glance I would have thought he was a master. Such a lifelike monk, how did Su Tong see that he was a corpse? It's very simple. Looking down, the monk has been hollowed out from his chest to his lower abdomen, and a huge white mouse is sitting inside. Good guy, they say that the Buddha was merciful and cut off his flesh to feed the eagles, but the monk here was even more ruthless, hollowing out his belly and feeding it to the mice. Squeak. The white mouse danced in the monk's belly, looking very majestic. The ghosts around him actually obeyed his orders and carried Ci-Min and Mr. Ji Ming over. Is this a monster? Ci-Min's eyes widened. He had gone through 4 scripts. He had seen rats bigger than this white rat, but never such a magical one. He couldn't help but be curious. He took a few more glances and saw that this rat looked arrogant. Looking like this, he couldn't help but complain in a low voice. But as soon as he finished speaking, the mouse was not happy. It pointed at Simon with its little paw. The ghost on the side reached out and grabbed Simon's hair, slapped it with several big slaps, and beat Simon for a while. There were stars in his eyes, and 2 teeth came out of each mouth. The urging gentleman on the side forced his eyelids to open, glanced at him and said feebly, "Stop talking, this is a spiritual creature." Mr. Urgent was horrified when he saw the white mouse. What shocked him even more was that the mouse was actually in the belly of a monk. Looking at this monk, he knew that he was an extraordinary big shot. I don't know how he was placed here. This rat may have eaten his flesh and gained some spirituality. I don't know how long he has been practicing here, and he can no longer use common sense to figure it out. Even these demons are its subordinates. Mr. Ji Ming was shocked and could not help but have some thoughts. He quickly knelt down and kowtowed to the mouse. "Great Immortal, have mercy on us. We entered the cave by mistake. We didn't know that the Great Immortal was here. I beg you, Great Immortal, spare my life. I am willing to swear a poisonous oath. When I return, I will set up a longevity tablet for the Great Immortal, and let the descendants of my clan worship him day and night." Although I don't know what the mouse is saying, animals have become spiritual and like the offering of human incense. If I make a poisonous oath, maybe the mouse will be interested and maybe let me go. Although this method is absurd, it is still very reliable. Isn't there a rat spirit among the 5 spirits in the Northeast? Yes, me too. Ci-Min was not the stupid young man like Yang Jiancheng. When he saw this, he quickly knelt down and kowtowed to the mouse. Sure enough, the mouse was very understanding of human nature. After hearing what the 2 people said, the mouse pinched his beard with his little paws and his 2 black eyes rolled around, as if he was thinking about it. Seeing that it was effective, Mr. Urging hurriedly continued to add fuel to the fire, saying that his clan had a large number of people, and he would build an ancestral hall for them in the future and worship them like their ancestors. As soon as the words changed, he praised the mouse again. The one who quoted scriptures said that lotus flowers were spitting out of his mouth, and he almost praised the mouse as a land god and the reincarnation of Buddha. On the side, Ci-Min also wanted to praise and flatter him, but on the one hand, his face was swollen and blood foamed every time he opened his mouth. It was really a mouthful of blood. On the other hand, even though he was a player, in terms of flattery skills, he was just as good as a killer. Sir, that's the difference between one day and one place. People quoted scriptures and said that there was a mouse who listened to the Dharma in front of the Buddha. In the end, he failed to achieve enlightenment for who knows how many years. After knowing the enlightenment of the Buddha mouse descended to earth and became a monk, preaching the Buddha's Dharma to save all living beings. You must be the Buddha mouse who descended to earth. Let's be a living bodhisattva who saves the world. This flattery made Ci-Min hold it in for a long time, but in the end he could only take advantage of the opportunity for the urging man to take a breath and add, "Yes, yes, he is right." The white mouse sat down in the cross-legged position, resting his chin on his hand, and listened leisurely to the two men slapping him, seeming to enjoy it extremely. Good guy, there are only 4 turtles on the side to act as guardians. When the urging man was talking, his mouth was dry and his eyes were dizzy. The mouse finally made some movement. It took a few clicks from under its buttocks, pulled out 2 black bean balls, and raised its hand to hand them over to the 2 of them. Hiss. Ci-Min took a closer look, and his mood was about to explode. After talking to us for a long time, you actually gave us food, this. But Mr. Urgent did not hesitate. When he saw the 2 black bean balls handed over by the mouse, he quickly opened his mouth. It's not that he recognizes this thing, it's just that your life is in someone else's hands. Why use poison when someone wants to kill you? The ghosts behind them can get them to see the king of hell in just a few clicks. If you don't eat, you will die, so why not give it a try? The mouse flicked his fingers and threw a bean ball into the mouth of the urging man. He then glanced sideways at Ci-Min. The human eyes, half smiling and a bit joking, made Simon's scalp tingle and he quickly opened his mouth. After the 2 of them ate the bean balls one after another, they soon felt a special feeling in their stomachs. I couldn't tell whether it was hot or cold, I just felt a special comfortable feeling all over my body, as if I was soaking in a hot spring, so comfortable that every pore was about to open. After a while, both of their foreheads were covered with sweat. Mr. Urgent even vomited out a mouthful of blood and felt refreshed. It seems that this time, the internal injuries caused by forcefully applying the heart-calming palm will be cured. And Simon can feel his changes more directly through the prop book. You consumed a special item, Woolingzy. You gain a 15% increase in overall physical fitness. You get special medicinal effects and your blood boils. Blood boiling lasts for 30 hours, during which the recovery ability is increased by 200%, and in the case of physical damage, the blood will be replenished quickly, ignoring the phenomenon of death due to excessive blood loss, and willpower will be greatly improved. The deeper the damage, the stronger the willpower is. Make money, make money. Upon hearing the prompt, Ci-Min exclaimed, "It smells really good. This thing is a divine medicine." As a pharmacist who can make potions, Ci-Min knows the value of this thing very well. Based on the blood heating effect alone, if he got it at an exhibition and sold 1,000 scripts to him, he would be afraid that someone would break the bank to buy it. What's more, it also increases the overall physical fitness by 15%, which is simply a magical medicine. Just as the 2 of them were thanking the mouse profusely, the mouse waved his hand, and the ghosts on both sides immediately began to undress the 2 of them with understanding. Hey, what is this? The 2 of them were confused for a while, watching the demon trying to take off their clothes. Not to mention they were very upset, but they didn't know what they were going to do, so they could only half push and half take off their clothes. When the two of them took off their clothes, the mice stared at them, making the two of them feel ashamed, thinking that they were going to be kept as harems. Is this a female mouse? Just as the two were thinking wildly, their hands and feet suddenly tightened. The demons on both sides grabbed their wrists and forced them to walk to the cross beside them. Wait a minute, something is wrong, sir. Looking at the blood-stained traces on the cross and the dark red soil, the air was filled with a fishy smell, just like a slaughterhouse, and my heart suddenly thumped. The joy in my heart disappeared and was replaced by a premonition of impending disaster. The urging man felt something bad in his heart. He glanced sideways and saw a ghost silently taking out a large cloth bag next to the cross. This demon seemed to have some kind of admiration for the cloth bag. He first held it high above his head, then carefully placed the cloth bag on the stone and slowly rolled it aside. When the two of them saw the strange blades inside, even a fool understood that they were about to use the knife on them. Don't want. Sci-Fi's spirit perked up, and he immediately thought of the blood-boiling effect in his mind, and immediately started struggling like crazy. But the two of them had already missed their best chance to escape. Their limbs were tightly grasped by the demon, and they couldn't help but resist. Just watching Simon struggle crazily, even taking out one poison after another from the prop book and throwing it on the ground, the mouse sitting in the monk's belly took out a mirror in a hurry. When the mirror was pointed at Simon, Simon heard a sneaky whisper calling him. He subconsciously turned his head and looked at the mirror. The pupils of his eyes gradually shrank. It was as if a body-fixing spell had been cast on his whole body. He let these things happen. The demons tied him to the cross. Su Tong hid behind the door, quietly looking at the mirror in the mouse's hand. His eyes brightened, and he thought to himself, "This thing is fun. It looks like a treasure at first glance, but it seems that it will only be fixed when you see the mirror." Thinking of this, Su Tong retracted his head, crouched in the corner, his eyes twinkling. He didn't know what he was thinking about. He patted his thigh for a moment and said, "Wealth is sought in danger, take it." As he said that, he calmly took out a piece of paper and started folding it in his hand. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 259. Buzz Buzz. The knife is getting polished as it is polished on the whetstone. Look at this knife. It doesn't hook or bend. It looks crooked. I don't know what it is used for. I think of using this thing on myself later. Simon's face turned pale and he was so frightened that he peed on the spot. Sir, is there any way to make me die now? Isn't Simon afraid of death? Of course I'm afraid, but when I think about my current state, when I wait for the knife to be cut, it will be worse than death, and my heart is about to burst. The effect of boiling blood is that there is no fear of bleeding. The more seriously injured the person is, the more awake he becomes. If it were a battle, it would be a top-notch magical medicine. Especially for those melee masters, if one pill was taken, it would be as powerful as a few nannies behind a berserk warrior. But this scene, to Simon, it was poison that was worse than death. At this time, the urging man's legs were weak, and he muttered to himself, it's over, this thing is a demon, not a fairy, why is there such an evil thing here? They had heard that there were too many shady things in the ghost market, but they didn't expect that they would encounter this thing when they randomly entered a shop. After hearing Simon's words, Mr. Urgent still didn't know what the effect of the Woolingzi he had just eaten was, so he said angrily, "No, I heard that biting your tongue can kill yourself. Can you try it?" When Simon heard this, he thought this was a bullshit idea. Biting your tongue and killing yourself is nonsense, not to mention the fact that it has the effect of boiling your blood. Just as the two were discussing how to die more easily later, the demon actually set up a small pot next to them. There was already boiling wax oil in the small pot before the two of them understood what it was about to do. A ghost picked up a knife and an iron spoon, walked straight in front of Ci-Min, and took a look at Ci-Min. He looked straight between Ci-Min's legs and pointed at the third leg. The white mouse nodded and eagerly picked up a pair of chopsticks, as if he was waiting to enjoy the delicious food. "Good guy, are you ready to eat hot pot?" In fact, there is a forbidden dish among the people, called donkey meat. This dish is very particular. The live donkey is fixed and there is a boiling oil pan next to it. The eater specifies a certain part to eat, and the chef peels off that piece of donkey skin to reveal the meat. Fresh meat, use a wooden spoon to ladle boiling soup over the piece of meat, and then cut it up for the diners to eat. The diners listen to the donkey's screams while eating the donkey meat with flavor. Now the white mice eat the same way, but the donkey is replaced by a human, and the oil is replaced by wax. Ci-Min's face turned pale, and tears came to his eyes as he watched the demon slowly pick up the spoon and fish out a spoonful of boiling wax oil in the pot. Then, you better shave off your hair, otherwise it will get pricked mouth." The ghost grinned. Why did he need to shave? This wax oil is not vegetable oil. If you pour it on and stain the hair, it will burn immediately. When the fire is out, the wax liquid will cool down and wrap the meat in it, so it can still be preserved. The water prevents nutrients from evaporating, which is a wonderful process. The white mouse beside him was already hungry and thirsty. His beards on both sides were trembling, and he was squeaking to urge the ghost to cook quickly. Suddenly his ears twitched and he turned around in confusion. Meow. A big white cat jumped out of nowhere. I don't know if it was flying or jumping. It swooped towards it. Squeak. Even though the mouse had become a spirit, he was scared to the core when he saw the cat. Seeing the big white cat rushing towards him, he hurriedly picked up the mirror just now and pointed it at the big cat. As a result, taking a photo was of no use at all. The mouse was so frightened that its beard trembled. It was too late to take anything else and had no choice but to run away. While running, he quickly asked those ghosts to help catch him. The demon's movements are fast, but it can't match the agility of a cat. From time to time, it can dodge left and right and give you another spin and drift, which is simply not something a normal cat can do. Cat. Seeing the chaos in front of them, Ci-Min and Mr. Ji Ming couldn't help but widen their eyes. They thought to themselves that God was blessing and sent a magical cat to save them. But when I took a closer look, I realized something was wrong. It wasn't a real cat, it was clearly a paper cat, and it was made to look lifelike. Made of paper, the two of them were hip to hip facing each other, feeling greatly surprised. The paper cat jumped up and down, easily dodging the attack of the demon, and getting closer and closer to the white mouse. It was so dexterous that it was unbelievable. Paper control. Finally, Mr. Urgent seemed to have remembered something. He looked around and saw Su Tong hiding in the shadows. He suddenly realized that this was right. It's not God opening his eyes, it's Su Tong controlling this paper cat. He raised his fingers slightly, as if he was commanding from a distance, and commanded the cat as if it was really alive. In addition to his proficiency in paper control, there is also the 20% control ability bonus brought by the Star Eye Tribulation Ring, which makes him even more powerful. Controlling the big cat, he forced the white mouse to run towards him with just a few clicks. Seeing the mouse running towards him, Su Tong suddenly stretched out a foot. The white mouse didn't know how long it had lived. When he saw a foot suddenly popping out, he kicked his limbs and jumped directly into the air. There was a hint of sarcasm in his two pairs of human-like black eyes. Do you think that you are also a mouse after all, and can you trip over your feet? However, the next moment, the white mouse couldn't be happy anymore. He looked at the figure jumping out from the corner with wide eyes, smiled and bowed to him respectfully. This, hasn't celebrated the new year yet? Before the white mouse could even think about it, it was knocked straight up by a mountain buckle. Immediately, its head was dizzy, the world was spinning, and it fell from the air on its head. But instead of falling to the ground, his tail hurt, and Sutong grabbed it and held it in his hand. As soon as the white mouse was caught by Sutong, the ghosts following behind were stunned and did not dare to come forward. Okay. Seeing Sutong grabbing the tail of the smelly rat, Sci-Fi's face flushed with excitement, as if he had seen the national football team finally advance to the World Cup. The urging man's ears were almost deafened. He glared at him angrily and said, "What the hell are you talking about? Have you forgotten what we are here to do? Do you think he will let us go? You would say that if they fell into the hands of a mouse, they would die at most, but in the hands of this little devil, it would be even worse for him than death." "Ha ha ha, that's just you, okay, we are different," Sci-Fi said while suppressing his joy. They are indeed different. The interests between players are eternal. As long as you take out enough interests, it is not wishful thinking to exchange your own life. Sutong calmly controlled the big cat and stuffed the mouse into the cat's belly. The cat jumped in front of the huge oil pan. As long as these ghosts make the slightest move, he will control the paper cat to jump into the cauldron and give the white mouse a good bath. Then he walked up to the two of them unhurriedly, and when he saw the two of them being honest with each other, he couldn't help but cover his mouth and laugh. "I'm really embarrassed if you do this. Stop talking nonsense, kill me if you want, and give me and my husband a good time." Mr. Urgent raised his neck, as if he wanted to kill or behead him. "No, who is talking to you and me? You are you and I am me." Okay, Sci-Fi was afraid that Sutong would treat the two of them equally, so he hurriedly opened his mouth to disassociate himself from Mr. Urgent. This made Mr. Urgent very angry. If she hadn't tied him hip to hip, back to back, she would have given him a kick no matter what. Brothers, we are all players. Give me a way to survive. You can choose whatever you want from my prop book." Sci-Fi shouted to Sutong. Unexpectedly, Sutong didn't care about him at all. He strode up to the monk's body and carefully measured it. He saw that the monk's skin and hair were fresh and his skin was still soft and elastic when he poked it with his fingers. It didn't feel like he was dead at all. Just like falling asleep. I jumped on the dragon's head and took another look, and found that there was a piece of Sanskrit written on the monk's back. I don't know what it was written on. The golden light looked like gold embedded in his skin. However, Sutong took a closer look and found that the monk's cause of death was not sitting down normally, but a nail being driven into the spine from the neck. This is a bit interesting. I took out King Yunyisha record and browsed it a few times, and I found a similar article. It is said that Mr. Song, a middle-aged man, once went to the south and met a former colleague. The colleague invited him to be a guest in the newly purchased house, which was a high-rise building. High-rise buildings were a new thing at that time. Mr. Song happily went to see what they looked like, but when he went in, he found something was wrong. The structure of that building is very strange. The elevators are placed in 4 directions, and the corridors cross left and right, forming a tic-tac-toe. When I entered my friend's house again, I found that the house was very dark, and the windows in the left and right bedrooms had no light or ventilation. There was only one window that could see light, but the light shone into the room, but it was unusually cold. Mr. Song realized that something was wrong, so he went to explore the building with his friends. Sure enough, he found a problem on the 9th floor. The 9th floor turned out to be a huge space with a coffin inside. They took the risk to open the coffin and took a look. The corpse in the coffin was covered with green hair, and there was a big iron nail on the back. This is Mission's corpse raising technique. A cursed nail is driven into the spine to prevent the soul from leaving the body. Combined with the secret technique, the corpse can never rot or even turn into a zombie. The book did not write what happened next, leaving only one sentence: "If you encounter someone, retreat." How evil. It seems that this monk is also in the same situation, but I don't know who left his body in this horrible place, and actually let the rats eat all the internal organs in the chest. Looks like he's unlucky too. As he spoke, he knelt down and poked his head into the monk's belly to take a look. Drink, the white mouse had really made a house inside, with all sorts of messy things inside. Su Tong casually picked up a small box, opened it and saw a stinky smell coming out. He quickly closed it, thinking that it couldn't be a mouse's toilet. Throwing it into the props, I found that it was the Woolingzi that Simon and the others had eaten. Of course, it was not as fresh as what they had eaten, but the effect was the same. This. Looking at the properties of Woolingzi, Su Tong was confused. Whether to eat this thing or not is a question. Just go and cut off the hemorrhoids with Tang Monk. When you look at the cut hemorrhoids, will you consider immortality? Su Tong put this issue behind his mind for the time being and kept it for now. At worst, he could lose the exhibition and get a lot of script points. Turning his eyes, he saw the mirror that the white mouse had picked up before. His eyes suddenly lit up, he picked up the mirror and threw it into the prop book. When he saw the entry in the props book, Su Tong's eyes suddenly lit up. This is a good thing.